Namo Buddhaya. Namo Buddhaya. Namo Okay, friends, so in the last 4 or 5 days, we've been talking primarily about, the practice of meditation, the practice of cultivating mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom, and going over the 4 foundations of mindfulness. And as the retreat will be over in another day or two, at least for some of you, I want to start talking about how to practice the Dhamma basically in the daily life. Because, practicing meditation in a formal setting like a retreat is one thing. But when you go out into the busy, active world, then there's a lot more pressures and unexpected circumstances that are coming up, and how to practice, especially the Noble Eightfold Path in the daily life. So I want to talk on the Noble Eightfold Path. I know you've all heard this. He talks on this subject many times probably in the past. But again, every time you hear it, maybe you might get something a little bit different from that. So as you all know, the Noble Eightfold Path is the 4th of the Noble Truths, the path leading to the end of suffering. And we also heard that at the start of the 4 Foundations of Mindfulness Sutra, of the Buddha also said, this is the direct way for the overcoming of sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. The abolishing of ignorance, the arising of wisdom, and the attainment of liberation. So, following the 4 foundations of mindfulness is one of the direct ways of overcoming suffering, and following the Noble Eightfold Path is the path leading to the end of suffering. So we'll see how they kind of connect. Now, apart from some different types of religions, the Buddha taught the Dhamma, and he really wanted people to know, why we are practicing the Dhamma. Why is the Buddha spending, 40 plus years walking thousands and thousands of miles all over India, teaching the Dhamma? And a lot of other, religions and so on, they say, don't understand why, just believe this, believe that, and or believe in this person, and everything will be all right. But the Buddha really wanted to understand, for people to understand what they are doing and why they are doing it. So that's why right understanding is sort of the first step in the Noble Eightfold Path. And right understanding has three levels. So the first level is the intellectual level. If you never heard a particular topic before, then usually the way most people find out about it is by hearing some talks about it, or reading books, or nowadays you can, Google it and read on the internet. But for a lot of people, their first encounter was a Dhamma was, through probably a book that a friend gave them, or they saw on somebody's coffee table when they were over visiting their house, or one or another way. Or a friend says, oh, there's a famous monk, coming to town, going to give a talk on a weekend. Let's go and talk on the Dhamma. And so you go along and you hear something. Oh, what was that? So you read something like the Four Noble Truths, practice in meditation, the Noble Eightfold Path, and it kind of pricks your interest because there's something new. And it's something that kind of strikes to your inner being, strikes to your experience, something you can relate to, suffering, the cause of suffering, greed, hatred, and delusion, the end of suffering, and the way leading to the end of suffering. So the way the Buddha put that into context, the way that he, that the Four Noble Truths is like the hypotheses of his teaching. And it's almost, it has a scientific ring to it. The cause of suffering, the end of suffering, how to get rid of the end of, overcome suffering. So, and actually that's the heart of right understanding. Even the Buddha said, what is right understanding? It's understanding suffering, understanding the cause of suffering, understanding the cessation of suffering, and understanding the path leading to the cessation of suffering. So the first level of understanding is the intellectual level. That, pricks our interest, gets us interested in the teaching. And that's what happened to me. The first time I ever heard about Buddhism was when I took a course in world religion in junior college. I had just gotten out of the army and going to junior college on the GI Bill. Anyway, I was planning a trip around the world following the hippie trail from Europe to India. So I thought, wow, let me, take a course on world religions. So I know something about the religions that I'm going to go in those countries going through. Like I thought I might go through Israel and, learn about Judaism, going through the Middle East, learn something about Islam, going to India, learn Hinduism and Buddhism. So I took that course. And it was interesting because I hadn't really studied those things before. And then we were supposed to write a term paper on the religion that interested us the most. And for some reason I chose Buddhism because the little bit that we had in the book was very cursory. Back in 1971, there was hardly any books on Buddhism. And so a lot of it, I read it in the Encyclopedia Britannica, in fact, because there were so few books. But anyway, out of all those, I chose Buddhism to write a paper about. And so I went to the library and started doing some research, but there was only 4 books on Buddhism in a whole public library of a big American city, Hard to believe that now, where you go through the catalog and there's probably 4,000 at least at the minimum. But anyway, so, I was reading just whatever it was, little summaries about what the 4 Noble Truths were, about meditation, about karma, rebirth, nibbana, and so on. It was all new, right? So it was all interesting. And it made logical sense, at least a little bit that I read. So anyway, I wrote a paper about it. And I did some, went and did this research. My mother was a school teacher. And she always, told me I should go to the library and read books. And I used to hardly never do that. Then she saw me go in the library, every day for a week. She said, "What are you in the library?" "I'm writing a paper." What got into that boy? So, anyway, I got an A+ on the paper. The first one and the last one. I forgot. The teacher wrote on the paper, she was very impressed by my knowledge of Buddhism. When I came back, after having been a monk and came back after about 6 years later, I reread that article I wrote and I crumpled it up and said, it was rubbish, threw it away. Not rubbish, kid stuff. So, but anyway, so it sparked my interest. But then, so it was only an intellectual understanding. And because there was no temples around and there was no one I could really go to, even if I wanted to study some more or practice some meditation, at that time there was nothing. Unless maybe you went to New York City or maybe Los Angeles to some Chinese temple or something. But anyway, so basically I forgot about it. And I, just went about my going to parties and having a good time, basically forgot about it. So, and that's why the intellectual understanding of the Dhamma is not enough. And the second level of understanding is the understanding that comes through reflection. That means you think about what you've read, kind of mull over it in your mind. Maybe you'll try to observe how some of those points are, working or showing up in the daily life and around you, especially in terms of greed, hatred, and delusion causing suffering and things like that. You can see it in yourself and see it in others, and as you ponder that, the results of your karma, you can reflect back and see that the various actions you did out of, greed, hatred, and delusion, how they came back to you to bring problems and suffering. So like that, when you reflect on it and observe, and even the beginning parts of meditation, that intellectual understanding now makes more sense. So you understand at a slightly deeper level. And then the third level of understanding is the deep insights that I've already mentioned before, that come in meditation. So anyway, the right understanding basically is like a roadmap. If you want to drive from Washington, D.C. to Los Angeles, you should have a roadmap. It's forget about GPS for the moment, the old days when it had a roadmap. And you had to have a roadmap and you had to study it. But a lot of people say, I don't need a map. I don't need a map. They jump in their car with a 6-pack of beer, a couple of joints. They put on Led Zeppelin, and they start cruising down the freeway. And they miss the turnoff for California and wind up in Minneapolis or Wilkes-Barre. So, having a roadmap is a very useful thing. So the Noble Eightfold Path is the Buddha's roadmap to go from a state of confusion and suffering to a state of clarity and overcoming suffering. So gaining a good intellectual understanding of the Dhamma is very useful by reading suttas and then by thinking about the Dhamma in order to keep that interest alive in your mind. And actually that's the second part of the Eightfold Path, is right thought. And right thought has 3 levels. According to the traditional text, the thought of non-greed. So actually, first of all, you think about greed and all the problems that greed causes, and then you think about how good it would be to be free from greed, or at least to have less greed, and all the benefits that come from having less greed. You wouldn't get into so many problems, or wouldn't have to spend so much money, or whatever. So many different benefits would come. Learning to be more content. And then the thought of non-ill will. Of course, whenever the Buddha talked about, like right thought and right action, actually he's talking about avoiding the negative aspects of it. So the thought of non-ill will. So you think about all the times when you were angry and had ill will and resentment and holding grudges about people and letting so many little things irritate you and make you angry and so on. And you see how yucky that is. How it's not a pleasant state. And so to think about if you were free from ill will. Mind was more inwardly peaceful and friendly, and have a friendly attitude and kindness towards others. And then the thought of non-cruelty. And you can see also, you can relate to when people are angry at you or cruel to you in ways how you felt. And so we can understand how other people feel when we are that way to them. But anyway, so contemplating how nice it would be to be free from this aspect of cruelty, especially in terms of speech and also our other forms of body language and actions harming others. And this extends even down to animals. Like when we were young, most people, wouldn't think twice about stomping on ants or poisoning cockroaches or trapping mice in those cruel mice traps that cut off their head, or even worse things. Because we regard that animals don't have a soul, or whatever we might believe, they don't have feelings. But we know that animals have fear. So anyway, so you think about that. So those 3 types of right thought, and they're all connected with the Dhamma, because almost the whole of the Dhamma practice is about cultivating non-greed, about cultivating loving kindness or friendliness towards others, and compassion. Now, apart from those 3 specific types of right thought, it means thinking about the Dhamma. But all of Dhamma can be classified into those 3 specific types of right thought, including meditation as a way to cultivate and to purify our thought. But anyway, so thinking about the Dhamma. And that is the second level of wisdom that I just mentioned previously, the second stage. After gaining intellectual understanding of the Dhamma, then you go on thinking about it. And that, deepens your interest. And hopefully leading to actually then practicing in a more conscious way the other aspects of the teaching, and especially of meditation. So this right thought is where I didn't continue in that, my understanding from that course on world religions. I didn't go on to develop right thought. And that's why that particular study of the Dhamma didn't have any immediate benefits. I didn't, except for maybe getting interest, it didn't last, and I didn't get any benefit from it really at that time. And I went back to, getting high and loaded and going to parties and, doing a lot of unskillful types of things. And suffering on account of it also. So that intellectual understanding didn't do me any good at that particular time. So once you have the right understanding and the right thought, these two steps together form the umbrella group of what is called wisdom. And then, of course, together with the right understanding and right thought, then you develop the deepest level of wisdom later on down the road when you've developed your meditation practice. And so those first two steps of the Eightfold Path, mostly they're kind of just mental. But now what are you actually going to do? So as part of right understanding, we understand about the law of karma, that our actions have their results. And that actions based on, motivated by greed, hatred, and delusion bring suffering. And specifically those actions such as killing, stealing, lying, other forms of negative speech, sexual misconduct, hurting, abusing other people through those ways, and intoxicating the mind. Those are the 5 predominantly things that create all the chaos and ills that you find in society. Almost every type of problem that you find in society comes back to people not valuing life and killing and physically abusing people, telling lies, stealing, whether it's stealing physically or stealing people's ideas, through, or whatever, different ways, stealing people's time and all kind of other things. So, and then, of course, is sexual abuse. It's so rampant. Everywhere you turn in the news and look, you read some new horrible scandal about people you never would have ever thought about, abusing people. They found out that they're doing that. And, of course, not even to let alone alcohol and drugs, the horrible ills that causes. So it's not a far stretch to see how the next steps of the Eightfold Path are about cultivating right speech, right action, and right livelihood. So these are the more active, what you might call the active practice of the Dhamma. And in daily life, because it's in daily life that you are engaging in these activities with your body and speech. in meditation, you might engage it a little bit, just sitting passively, but it's out there in the daily life that you commit most of the karma. So, right speech is that first level of, actually starting to change your physical behaviors. So, right speech has 4 levels to it, because we all know the precept about avoid from telling lies. And then there's the malicious speech, which is basically defined as telling rumors and tales about other people, talking about other people behind their backs. Usually it's to get something out of it. And in all these forms of speech, it's about hurting others in some way. Telling lies about somebody, you hurt them. Spreading rumors about them, whether they're true or not. And usually we tell tales about others, tell about other people's faults in order to hide our own. You can see this perfectly clear in politicians, right? They're dragging all these skeletons out of the closet against their opponents. Oh, look at what they did 10, 15, 20 years ago. They smoked pot, or they did this and that. And then people will stop looking at them and look at the other people. So, and then there's the harsh speech. So this is the, speech that has anger and hatred behind it, and especially the use of 4-letter words, or the words in common language that are known as vulgar, or swear words and so on. But especially if you're doing it with anger and hatred behind it. So these 3 especially, telling lies, malicious speech, and harsh speech, these all have karmic consequences, because, people are going to find out if you told lies, spread rumors about them, or swear at them. There's going to be results, there's going to be repercussions, retributions, and it will come back to us in one way or another. So, again, why are we practicing Dhamma? Well, to mitigate or minimize the amount of problems and suffering in our life. And one of the most prevalent types of mental suffering is guilt, worry, remorse, and fear about what you've done, things you shouldn't have done, or things you should have done but didn't do. And people, they awake at night worrying, something will find out that I told this lie, you're going to find out that, broke their trust, told their secrets, and so on. So, anyway, so those precepts are there. And then the 4th type of speech is what is called frivolous talk. Now, this is a little bit, it's not directly going to cause harm to others necessarily, but it's kind of just fritters away our time. Basically, it's just idle chit-chat about, beauty queens and sporting games and whatever, who's got the biggest army, whatever. Just anyway, talk that's not about the Dhamma, basically, it comes down to that. And that's probably harder to practice for most people, because there's gray lines there that's not clearly defined exactly as what would constitute that. But, thinking about the Dhamma is encouraged. And especially that's why we have the rule of maintaining silence during retreats so that people avoid getting caught up in chit-chat. And I've already mentioned that before about how, just some innocuous little few exchanges of words and pleasantries can then, multiply and keep proliferating until you actually are talking a bunch of, frivolous nonsense in a lot of cases. And that excites the mind. So anyway, right speech, the practice of right speech is defined in those four types of, avoiding those four types of unskillful speech. And then the next stage is right action. This is what we do with our body. So to avoid stealing, to avoid physically harming or abusing people with the body or, sticks or weapons. Of course, normally it's referred to as killing, but to extend it even to, avoid physically harming them, even if it doesn't amount to killing. And the sexually abusing others or sexual misconduct, harm that we do to others through that outlet. So again, because all these have their heavy karmic retributions or consequences. And then there's right livelihood, the way you're going to earn your living in the daily life. And because everyone has to earn a living in these, especially in these modern societies. And so we should try to have an occupation that doesn't cause us to directly or even indirectly break one of those precepts. And why is that? Because that of the the effects that it will have on your mind, maybe not directly but indirectly, and especially the fear and worry of getting caught, especially like cheating in business or having other occupations that cause harm to others. So, at the end of the day, everybody has to go home and sleep at night. But, knowing that, whatever you're doing to earn your living is causing, these kind of crossing the lines or gray areas on, breaking the precepts, then it would work on your unconscious. But, these days, it's even difficult to find an occupation that doesn't involve some type of subtle deceit or outright deceit or telling lies, especially about your products. We hear about it all the time. Businesses that are hiding the truth about their products, that they're not harmful for people, and then later on they're finding out they are harmful. Or, lying about the automotive exhausts, in order to sell more cars, or, businesses, completely imbued with these types of deceits. And unfortunately, even in the medical field too, right, with drugs. In order to sell drugs and so on, they don't tell the whole truth about side effects or other things. And then, people cheating on their income taxes or other ways to, or telling lies, on their job applications and so on. But unfortunately, society has got to the point where these things are endemic, and they're considered almost to be normal. And people do it without even batting their eyelash. But it does have some subtler effects on our mind, especially when we then go into meditate. Now, if you're just leading an ordinary life and you don't care, then you don't care about suffering too much, then of course these things don't really matter too much. But for people that want to meditate, when they sit down to meditate, this is what comes up in your meditation as hindrances. Worrying about those things. Or feeling guilty if you did some of that, knowing that it's not right. So anyway, these three aspects of the Eightfold Path, right speech, right action, right livelihood, these belong to the umbrella group of skillful conduct, or the Pali term sila. In sila, the term sila has an interesting root. One of the meanings, or the root of sila is sil. It comes from what I heard, somebody had told me, like in the singular, sitala means cool, right? So sila, coming from that root to cool, means to cool down your behavior. Because when people are breaking the precepts, you'd say they're hot under the collar with greed, hatred, and delusion. Their nervous system is on fire with greed, hatred, and delusion. So to cool down, to practice a sila means to cool down your negative actions. And back even back in the 60s, the favorite saying in California was, "Cool it, man. Cool down. Cool it." When somebody was getting angry, "Cool it, man." Or now they say, "Chill," right? Chill, dude. But, those are very superficial meanings of the word back in those days. So sila means to cool down. And especially your overt physical or verbal type of actions. There's a deeper level of inner sila where you are purifying your mind, but in the beginning, at least to refrain. All the precepts are couched in terms of, I undertake the training rule to abstain from stealing, abstain from killing, lying, sexual misconduct, intoxicating drinks, and so on. So they imply it's a training rule. They're all couched as, these are training rules. Because we have to retrain ourselves. Because since birth we've been trained in unskillful ways. So therefore we have to retrain ourselves in ways of skill. So, that's really the active part of practicing Dhamma on the daily life with your interactions with people, interactions with your family, people at work, people on the street, where, interactions, more often than not, stir up emotions and speech and so on that then produce a lot of difficult situations. So, then how are you going to do that? And look, we already saw that most people want to live in happiness and freedom from suffering. But when we look up and look in society, a majority of people are doing these things that actually bring them suffering. So how is that? People want to be happy, but they're doing the very things that bring them suffering. So why are they doing that? If you go down to Walmart and question people coming out of the store, and give them the precepts and say, you want to be happy, you better follow these. Get out of my way. No, most people know that living by those precepts is, usually espoused in most religions and so on, or societies. But the problem is, learning to actually do it and to change your behaviors. So anyway, that's where the last 3 steps of the Eightfold Path play the most important part in the right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration, or what we generally call the practice of meditation. But right effort is not only done just in meditation. Right effort is the effort you do for all of the above, the effort to cultivate right understanding. So the effort to go from intellectual understanding to reflective understanding, from reflective understanding to meditative understanding. The effort to practice right thought in the daily life. So like the effort to practice metta to combat ill will, the effort to practice compassion to combat or overcome cruelty, and the effort to practice frugality and contentment in order to weaken the greed for so much stimulation and so on. And then also the effort to do all that. That means the effort to refrain from doing the negative aspect and the effort to actively cultivate the opposite quality. So as we just mentioned in those examples, if anger is rising, the effort to kind of overcome or let go of that anger, and you do so by reflecting on the dangers and harm from anger, and then substituting it with practicing metta. And then in the same way, you can reflect on the dangers and the suffering that comes from too much excessive sensual craving and greed. Because if it's a greed for food and other things, it could harm the body and cause you physical suffering. And if it's greed for other things, it become addicted in your mind, or so many other things. So the right effort is one of the most important aspects of the Noble Eightfold Path, because nothing is accomplished without effort. But these days, a lot of people say, oh, everything should be effortless. Don't exert any effort. Everything will just come to you naturally. If you just be mindful, everything will just naturally come. You don't need to exert effort. Well, as they say, LOL, right? Lots of luck. Or don't hold your breath. So the right effort is there behind everything we do. Even the effort like to get up early and meditate. A lot of people, if no one's watching them, the old lazy habits will come and they'd rather sleep in. And you say, I'll sleep for another 30 minutes, and 2 hours later wake up, I'm stupid. So anyway, those 8 aspects of the Eightfold Path, those just kind of in brief, but those cover all of our different, almost, everything that would happen in our daily life can be covered by one or other of those practices. And out of those 8 steps of the Eightfold Path, let me just go back a minute. So the the last three stages of right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration are grouped under the umbrella group of meditation, or usually it's panya, wisdom. Or the aspect of concentration. Actually, when we're using the terms sila, samadhi, and panya refers to, excuse me, it's a concentration. So, the term concentration includes the right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Now, so the three most important parts of the Eightfold Path are, the first one is right understanding. And Bhante Gunaratana from Bhavana Society, he often talks about this. He calls them the three pillars of the Eightfold Path. So the three main pillars that kind of support the other five aspects of the Eightfold Path. So right understanding is probably the most important part. Because with right understanding, we won't do anything else. And so right understanding understands what is right, and it understands what is wrong, according to Dhamma. So in the Dhamma language, when we say something is right, that means doing these things lead to the reduction of suffering and the increase of happiness. And when we say something is wrong, it leads to the increase of suffering and the increase of ignorance. So those are the criterion that the Buddha used in using the terms right or wrong, like right action, wrong action. But now in the West, these days when you say right or wrong, people get offensive. What? Nothing is right, nothing is wrong. So right understanding understands what is right or skillful, and understands what is wrong or leads to suffering. And then the second important one, or the second and third one, maybe they're equally as important. One doesn't necessarily come before the other, but generally it's the mindfulness would come next. Right mindfulness. Followed by the third one, what? No. I just mentioned it a few minutes ago. Effort. Right, effort. And I'll try to explain in examples. So, right understanding, right mindfulness, and right effort. So let's say some idea pops into your mind about wanting to, tell a tale about somebody else, or spread a rumor, or, tell somebody's faults to others in order to turn people against them. And so your right understanding, or the mindfulness, would be aware of that. There's this intention to do malicious speech. Then the understanding understands that malicious speech is wrong, according to karma. Will bring painful results. And then right effort is the effort to abandon that urge to do the wrong speech, and the effort to replace it by telling the person's good traits, not the bad traits. Because everybody has good qualities and bad qualities. But normally we like to focus on people's bad qualities. Because again, it helps take attention away from our own bad qualities, because people stop looking at us and start paying attention to others. So, in the same way, the right for anything else that happens, even a thought, or maybe an understanding, maybe an idea. I don't think that, I don't believe in karma. Or karma is a bunch of hogwash, or rebirth, or some other idea. And then you'll be mindful, this thought has come into the mind. So right understanding, analyze it as saying, this is a wrong thought, according to Dhamma. And then the effort to abandon that thought and replace it with the right thought. For example, what? You don't believe in karma? Did you ever get caught telling a lie and then suffer because people found out you tell a lie? Well, yeah, that's just, so that's not karma? Well, oh, really? Oh. Anyway, so so that those three things can be applied to even our understanding. Our thought, a wrong thought, comes into the mind. Such as, it doesn't matter if I, sleep with somebody else's husband or wife. They want to do it. What's the harm? Even if one's self is already married or something, let's say, according to Western law. That's just one example, and don't want to step on anybody's toes or anything about that. So, but then the right understanding, well, that's wrong according to the precept, or it could entail some problems. And then the effort not to do it. And then be free from the worry about, getting caught or, any other type of action. So, and again, these are not absolute do's or don'ts. The precepts and so on are not absolute do's or don'ts. If you do these, you're going to go to hell or something else. It's all based on, this Mano Pubangama Dhamma. All actions are led by the mind. Mind is their master, mind is their maker. If one acts or speaks with an impure mind, then suffering follows. If one acts or speaks with a pure state of mind, then happiness follows. And this is one of those natural laws that we've already, mentioned before. It's not just something that Buddha made up. People say, the Buddha, made up karma and made up rebirth and this. No, he's not making these things up. These are ancient natural laws. But anyway, so that's the way we have to reflect on the Noble Eightfold Path. And the more we reflect on it, the more it will stay in our mind to help us during the daily life. Because there's something that comes up in the daily life. There's something called the 4 Nis, right? I mentioned this before. How many people remember the 4 Nis? What? Yeah. Anything can happen to anybody at any time, in any place. That means anybody could drop dead of a heart attack at any time, in any place. Because that happens. How many people have heard about that? People dropping dead of heart attacks. or getting killed in a car crash. Even young people. Any million type of, disasters and problems that, at least every day around the globe, probably, 100,000 people or more are dying from one of these unknown causes and conditions. And even when they weren't even old, people, even young people. And so again, remember that little saying that tomorrow or the next life, we don't know which will come first. Because that's the impermanence of life. So that's why we need to have the practice of Dhamma at our disposal, and have to have these understandings. And that's why the study of it, just even intellectually, studying and memorizing these steps will help you, because when something happens in the daily life, there's always something to reflect on. What's the understanding of this situation? to think about it. Or to avoid, overreactions or doing some unskillful karma. Because again, so many surprises and unexpected things pop up during the life. And we don't have a lot of time to say, wait a minute, what did the Buddha say about this? Where's my rule book? Where's my suttas? You don't have the luxury of all that much time. You have to make quick decisions sometimes. So the more that you have studied the Dhamma and reflected on it, then it stays there in the back of the mind. And so you'll know how to apply the right effort in a situation. And the right understanding, the right thought, and the right effort to either do the right thing or not do the wrong thing. Again, all about to minimize the impact of future conflicts and problems and suffering that would come about if you overreact to a situation or do something unskillfully. Now, as I mentioned before, the 8 steps of the Noble Eightfold Path are normally depicted as a wheel. It's called the Wheel of Dhamma. An 8-spoked wheel. And it's depicted that way for a reason. Because as we know, a wheel is like a bicycle wheel. If all the spokes are tightened evenly, in the proper tension and evenly, then the wheel will roll, smoothly down the road and to arrive where you want to go, hopefully, comfortable way. But what happens if some of the spokes on the bicycle wheel are broken or loose? I think, Petra, you ride bicycles a lot, right? What happens if the spokes are broken or loose on your bicycle? Yeah, it wobbles. You get on the bike and it won't be too smooth. It will wobble and you might get to where you're going, but it won't be very fast or comfortable. And as you say, it could just collapse. So if all the spokes are tightened evenly, then it should roll smoothly. So in the same way, if any of those steps of the Eightfold Path are weak, then our practice of Dhamma, still we may practice and then make some progress, but is, gonna, have bumps in it, or it might take a little bit longer than it should to reach the destination. So I just wanted to mention those things, and maybe tomorrow I'll finish a talk and include some other aspects of that, talking about Sila, Samadhi, and Panya, and some other things about practicing in the daily life also. Because I know some people are leaving early Sunday morning, so I may give like a closing talk on Saturday evening or cover some points that I would have normally wanted to mention. Okay?